not accepted here, not really accepted here. I definitely can identify with that.
Think right now on the last movie you saw. Doesn't matter the genre, doesn't matter who starred in it. Think about the movie as a whole. What do you see? What do you hear? What are the key acting bits, the key action bits, the set pieces and locations that the film takes place in? Do you know the truth about everything you're witnessing on screen? As history has shown us, the movies are a place to go and escape reality. And that's proven in how movies are made and then displayed on the big screen. How much do you know about the process, though? Allow us to show you what movies really look like. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Number 8. The visual effects. Let's start this off with the most obvious of things, shall we? VFX and SFX. Especially in the last 20 years or so, where computers have advanced to such a degree that movies that would have looked so cheesy back in the 80s or 90s now look like visual masterpieces in the 2010 and no doubt in 2021 and beyond. The visual effects that you see for things like superhero films, sci-fi films, fantasy series, and more are what help immerse you in their world and make you feel like you're really there. But of course, when we the viewer see it, we see it in all its glory. When the actors on set look at them, all they see are green screens, blue screens, or people dressed up in certain outfits to help others see what technically is there. You've all seen behind the scenes things no doubt from movies like Avengers or Star Trek or Harry Potter, where things in the background or even the foreground are rendered heavily with CGI. But even that has limits when it comes to needing serious interactions between characters. A great example of this is Jurassic World. Chris Pratt had to go and interact with 4 different raptors in various scenes. On screen, we see dinosaurs. In the real movie world though, he was looking at an actor dressed in a motion capture suit that had a dinosaur shape in certain places, so Pratt would know where to look. Definitely changes the feel of things. And obviously it's something they had to get used to. And yet, sometimes they can't. Sir Ian McKellen, for example, loved working on The Lord of the Rings because they did a lot of practical effects and only certain amounts of CGI. But when he did the Hobbit trilogy, Peter Jackson used a lot more CGI and it showed. And apparently McKellen broke down during one shot and went, "This is not why I got into acting," or something to that effect. His feelings aside, visual effects are everything in most films nowadays. And what you see on screen is definitely not what is viewed in filming. Number 7. The locations. When it comes to film sets and the locations they film in, it can sometimes be hard to tell what are real sets and what are manufactured ones. Granted, for certain movies where you're on alien worlds, you can tell they're all CGI. But others aren't so easy. Finding the perfect location is an art form, and it's not easy. Many films shoot in familiar places to viewers because they're not just recognizable, it's cheaper in some ways. There are location scouts that go to certain areas and apply for permits to try and get the perfect spots for shooting. And sometimes it requires big sacrifices, such as in the film I Am Legend with Will Smith, where they literally shut down several blocks of New York City for weeks so they could film certain shots. Oh, and remember The Last Jedi and that island that Luke Skywalker was on with the steps? That actually is a real location. But other times, we'll go and find spots that are close enough and then do simple skyline shots of the real locations to make you remember that you're in a place like New York, LA, and so on. And of course, many internal shots are filmed on incredibly detailed sets. So while you're seeing a whole house on screen, they're seeing rooms that aren't connected most times and they're just going from one spot to the next in the film set. They'll do whatever it takes to make it feel like it's supposed to. Number 6. The stunts. Here's an element that sometimes gets lost in things, but for many scenes in action films, various effects are needed to make certain stunts work, such as rappelling from a high point, jumping from explosions, getting shot, and so on. Let's take that last one. In many films, getting shot sends the person flying backwards and there's a bright flash from the gun to let you know the shot went off. On set, the shooter just holds the gun up and pretends to fire it. The flash comes later. And as for the victim, they're wearing a wire harness that'll jerk them back after being shot. Harnesses and wires are of course a key part of filming various action sequences, and special VFX render them out so that you don't see them in the actual final product. You know, unless it's a Starbucks coffee cup. Right, Danny? Number 5. The sound effects. A very key part of any movie is the sound effects of various things in the scenes. From cars whizzing by, to punches being landed, and more, every sound effect adds to the wonder of the movie. But when filming, you don't hear or see that at all. Mainly because most true sound effects are added after filming has been shot. A great example is the punch. In movies, the actors don't actually hit each other. That would hurt. So they fake it, but obviously that means the sound effect isn't there. That's where the sound crew comes in and uses a multi-layered sound effect to make a rich punching sound. Mythbusters actually did an episode on this if you want to go look at it. Now, some sound effects are natural, but many are added afterwards. Number 4. The takes. When you watch a movie, you're looking at the final product, which is meant to be the perfect version of the film, more or less. But regardless of whether the film is good or bad, you're seeing the actors in their best take. But that doesn't always happen the first time out. In fact, part of the reason that filming takes so long is that things go wrong on set and thus many takes of a certain scene have to be done. It happens. Also though, in these takes, sometimes they're told to react to certain things. Like in the original Star Wars film, where during the Alderaan destruction scene they had to watch a blank screen, and were told when Alderaan exploded so that they knew when to go into their reaction moments. That's not something you see in the final cut because of how everything is spliced together. Number 3. The props. Part of the fun of movies is believing that everything you see on screen is real, from top to bottom. Even when it's something real world like a cop movie or detective mystery. But in truth, a lot of things you see in the movies are fake, even when they're based on real items. Guns are a perfect example of this. Most guns have to be real on sets for things like action sequences. Obviously, these are made to fire blanks and thus not hurt anyone. But the catch is, not all guns you see in movies are real. Some are just beautifully made props to make you think they're real and thus put everyone in less danger. Things like hammers, axes, wrenches, and more are the same way because using those kinds of weapons on the set would be dangerous. And yeah, swords are the same as well. Actors are usually given either a fake sword or one that is only halfway in length and then the rest is rendered in CGI, so that even less damage is potentially done. That's a part of movie magic. Number 2. The silence. Picture now a dramatic scene from a movie you've seen recently. What do you hear? You likely hear a song or melody that is put in to help sell the emotion of the scene. But when you're filming, it's anything but. The line "quiet on set" is done so that the actors involved can have the silence they need to perform and get all their lines captured on the microphones. So thus, every take more or less is one of dead silence outside of the actors moving and talking, because they don't need music distracting them. Number 1. Makeup. Finally, let's talk about one final BTS thing. Makeup. For sci-fi and fantasy movies especially, you often see actors and extras and beyond dressed up in all kinds of makeup for various reasons. And when you're on set, you see them in full makeup at times. But getting there is anything but easy. For certain characters, it can take hours in a makeup chair to get you ready to shoot, and it requires incredible amounts of dedication to go through that day in and day out. That's why makeup artists are always in demand in Hollywood. They're always needed to make the movie stand out. So what do you think? What do you think of this look at the movies you watch and how they really go down in terms of processing and rendering effects, and how they get the perfect shot and so on and so forth? Does this give you a greater appreciation for films as a whole? Or does it ruin the illusion, if you will, in terms of how grand movies feel? Are you going to try and dissect the films you watch next to see what real elements are there and which ones aren't? Let us know in the comments below, be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.